The truth about Atlantis. So everybody knows about the lost city of Atlantis. There's mythology and movies about it, made popular by the Greek philosopher Plato in the Timaeus and Critias dialogues around 460 BCE. He talked about a somewhat advanced civilization home to an island in the Atlantic Ocean. The city was of concentric circles of land with a canal running through it. They supposedly had a powerful navy, advanced technology, and riches beyond belief, but they went power hungry and waged a war across Asia and Europe, and eventually lost to Athens and sank to the bottom of the ocean. Now I'm going to explain why the much lesser known Eye of Africa is Atlantis, and I'm going to go fast, so try to stay with me. First, I'm going to start with some of the basic stuff, stating some of Plato's descriptions of Atlantis and comparing them to the RICHART structure, aka the Eye of Africa. So Plato said there were alternate zones of sea and land, larger and smaller, encircling one another, and there were 2 of land and 3 of water. Comparing this to the eye, we get a match: 2 of land, 3 of water. Plato also said its length was 127 stadia, which converts to 14.6 miles. Well, would you look at that? Another match. The whole island would have been around 25 miles, considering he said there was a wall around the outer city and it was 50 stadia from the outside, which is around 4.8 miles. In comparing this to the eye, we get another match. It's simple math. 4.8 times 2 plus 14.6 equals 24.2, which is significantly close to 25 miles. Doesn't even matter that much because measuring the eye can range from 22 to 26 miles. Speeding it up, he said the mountains on the island were celebrated for their number, size, and beauty. This part of the island looked toward the south and was sheltered from the north. Eye of Africa's mountains shelter it from the north and open towards the south. He also said the surrounding mountains of the city flowed with rivers, and you can clearly see rivers flowing from the mountains. We know there were rivers, and not because Snapchat says so. He also said the plain was smooth and even, and that the country immediately surrounding the city of Atlantis was a level plain itself surrounded by mountains which descended towards the sea. Now comparing that to the RICHART, we see a large level plain on both sides, and it would have been closer to the sea back then, so mountains descending towards the sea does make sense. Continuing on, let's go over Plato's description of Atlantis' structures. Before I do, shout out to George S. Alexander and Natalie Rosen, which brought attention to the Eye of Africa being Atlantis, and shout out to Jimmy's channel, Bright Insight. This is where I found out about it. Continuing on, he said the stone which they quarried was white, another black, and a third red. The main city was constructed with red, black, and white rocks. Interesting, considering that's exactly what we find at the RICHART. All types of rocks. This guy went to the center of the eye and found structures in person, and when you look at this structure, it looks very similar to the ones in the nearest village. It's Odan, right here towards the mouth of the RICHART. Now comparing the structures in Odan to the ones in the RICHART, they're so similar it's not even funny. This is another example, it's basically a match. So wouldn't that mean there should be structures all throughout the RICHART? Well, technically no, there wouldn't be much considering a flood wiped it all out, but there's still so many structures inside the RICHART. Here's some weird structures I found in snap maps. It's just so weird why all these would be in the RICHART, you never know. I found a synagogue, which is like a place of worship or a church. Don't forget about the Temple de Atlas, which I found in February, and they changed the name to the unexplored structure. Here's some locations of structures in the RICHART, as well as near it. So Google has to know something considering they changed the name from Temple de Atlas to the unexplored structure. That's not the only structure in the RICHART that looks like that as well. There's actually a couple different ones. These look like fortresses or castles of sorts. Like, for real. This guy seems to think it was the 2 guard towers, but considering there's more than 2 of them, I don't know. Another thing about the Temple de Atlas, here's who Atlas was for those who don't know. Now everybody knows Poseidon's the god of sea. He had 5 pairs of twins, and there were 10 kingdoms, and each of those twins went to rule one of those kingdoms. Atlas was the first son of Poseidon, as well as the first king. And then if you look up who the first king of Mauritania was, which is where the Eye of Africa is, his name was also Atlas. You want to know something interesting about where the highest birth rate of twins is per capita? Oh wow, it's Nigeria. Would you look at the geographical proximity to Mauritania? That's absurd. Now let's look at the Atlas Mountains, which are a little over 1,000 miles from the RICHART. These mountains were indeed named after Atlas. The inhabitants of the mountain are known as the Berber or the Mori people. Mauritania, Mori people. So who's heard of Herodotus, the famed father of history? He made this map of the known inhabited land of 450 BC. If you look right here, you see Atlantis, right below the Atlas Mountains. Here's another map by him. If you look down there, it clearly says Atlantis. And we know about Atlantis and Atlantia, putting the RICHART structure, or the Eye of Africa, in between both of them. Now moving on to the flood, you can clearly see striations of land from west to east or east to west. It's not hard to see that sand or mud could have been pushed in from the ocean. This cataclysm would have been huge. It literally looks like a giant wave ran through here. And Plato said Atlantis is part of the Atlantic, which is now no longer accessible by ship. He said once sunk by the earthquake, it became an impassable barrier of mud to voyagers sailing from hence to any part of the ocean. This is clear as day. Hella mud in between the RICHART and the ocean. That would also explain the eye being heavily eroded. Presumably this is what it looked like 11,000 years ago if you account for the difference in sea level and elevation. Now you can clearly see there appears to be concentric circles of land encircling one another. And there's hella water around the RICHART. The RICHART structure is high in elevation now, but this proves that back then it was lower, further supporting that this is Atlantis. Plato also said a well-needed central acropolis provided the city with fresh water, and that the god Poseidon found no difficulty in making special arrangements for the center island, bringing up 2 springs of water from beneath the earth, one of warm and one of cold. All water wells in and around the RICHART are exclusively salt water, up until 200 meters below the surface. But they found fresh water above that 200 meters in the center island of the RICHART. Ooh, another match. Now think about it, the RICHART is 250 plus miles inland and above 1,300 feet in elevation. That's another match for me, and if you're not convinced with what I've said so far, here's some more extra stuff. There's many artifact dealers around the RICHART, proving a civilization did once live there along with the structures. Artifacts like these which look like boat weights, very smooth spheres which look like cannonballs. We know Atlantis had a powerful navy. Shit, they found ancient whale bones in Mauritania, not fossils, bones. Plato said there was a great number of elephants on the island, and we know elephants were abundant in Mauritania. There's even cave art about them. Plato also said there was an abundance of metals, coppers, and gold, which happened to be the main exports of Mauritania. And don't forget the Sahara was once fully green. I ran out of time.